So maybe it's from one who's being too bright. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Gathering More Leaves. I'm your host, David M. DeBacker, and this sixth episode will be the final episode on of the series on the Pickering family. And I just have a couple of more items, one of which is in regards to an earlier ancestor whom was not of the Pickering line, but did live in the area during, or actually before the Salem witchcraft trials of the 1790s. And I was focused on that. I was curious to see what other ancestral families of mine were living in Salem, Massachusetts, or thereabouts at the time of the Salem witch trials. And while there were others who lived in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, but other than the Flint family, none of the others lived in Salem. Nevertheless, I discovered one of my father's ancestors who played a role in another controversial trial in British North America that occurred about 50 years before the Salem trials. That ancestor's name was John Cogshall, and he lived from 1599 to 1647. And the trial that I refer to was of his next door neighbor, whose name was Anne Hutchinson. That's a name that is sure to be recognized by those familiar with the history of religious tolerance and of free speech in North America. The Puritan leaders of the Massachusetts Bay Colony accused Mrs. Hutchinson of heresy. And I won't go into all the details of that here, but if you were to look it up, say on Wikipedia, if you look for the Free Grace Controversy, that's Free Grace Controversy, or the article on John Cogshall, or the article on Anne Hutchinson, to get more information about what the specifics were of that trial. And so for John Cogshall, in addition to being a witness for the defense at Anne Hutchinson's trial, he was one of the founders of the colony of the state of Rhode Island, or the colony that became the state of Rhode Island, and was a signatory of the Portsmouth Compact, a document that was signed on March 7th, 1638, and that established the settlement of Portsmouth, which is now the town in the state of Rhode Island, which is now a town in the state of Rhode Island. His name has been in my database for many years, but I only made the connection this morning. Mrs. Hutchinson's trial, which took place in 1637, resulted in her and her supporters, John included, being found guilty of various charges, which resulted in their being disenfranchised, disarmed, and banished from the colony. Many of them, including my ancestor, John Cogshall, followed Roger Williams to Rhode Island. And in 1647, John was elected first president of the colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations. John Cogshall assisted in the founding of 2 cities, 2 states, and 2 separate and independent governments. To put this into perspective, John Cogshall was a 3rd great-grandfather of Abigail Chase, the mother of Cordelia Pickering's grandmother, Alice Pickering, thus making him my father's 9th great-grandfather. So in addition to what I had learned about John Cogshall, I was also curious to find out information about the Pickering ancestors who left Salem and moved to Mendon, Massachusetts. This was in the 1730s that this move occurred. So I scoured Google Books and I came across a book titled The Annals of the Town of Mendon, dated 1659 to 1880. And the book was published sometime in the 1880s. 3 generations of my Pickering ancestors lived in Mendon for nearly a century. I was uncertain about the exact timing of Edward and Hannah Pickering's departure from Salem to Mendon, but it appears they made the move in the 1730s while keeping property in Salem-Lynnfield. Their son, Jonathan Pickering, was born in Mendon in 1736. Edward Pickering and Hannah Pickering were blessed with 8 children, 2 of whom are my ancestors. Their son, Edward Jr., had a daughter named Alice, who married her first cousin, Jonathan Pickering, the son of Edward's younger brother, Jonathan. Edward Sr., in keeping with the tradition of his English forebears, was a husbandman who primarily raised sheep. These are the extent of the details I knew about Edward Pickering's family prior to discovering the Annals of Mendon. So what I learned from the Annals of Mendon was primarily focused on the military service of the Pickering men. According to a muster roll located on pages 284 to 285, Edward Pickering Jr., who lived from 1732 to 1800, and who was my 5th great-grandfather, was a soldier in the Massachusetts militia during the 7 Years' War, which is also known as the French and Indian War. The muster roll is described as a, quote, return of men enlisted or impressed for His Majesty's service within the province of Massachusetts Bay in Colonel Whiting's regiment under the command of Geoffrey Amherst, General and Commander-in-Chief of His Majesty's forces for the invasion of Canada, end quote. It was a 3-month enlistment in the summer of 1759. So what this means is that he was either at the Battle of Fort Ticonderoga, which occurred on July 26th and 27th of that summer, or he was working on a crew constructing Fort Crown Point. Both of these areas are located in what is now upstate New York, near the Canadian border in the Lake Champlain region. At the time, Edward was 27 years old. There are 2 muster rolls from 1775, one that lists men from Mendon who responded to the alarm on April 19th, and another that lists men from Mendon who enlisted for 3 months' service following the general alarm. It appears that Edward's eldest son, Benjamin, was one of the first responders, in other words, a Minuteman, and that Edward was on one of the 3 months men of Mendon, whose service expired August 1775. Now, I guess Edward forgot the universal rule, don't forget to bring your towel, because the Annals of Mendon record that in 1775, the selectmen of the town voted to spend $2 to buy him a blanket. In 1778, at least one other son of Edward Pickering served in the Massachusetts militia. My fifth great-grandfather, Jonathan Pickering. He appeared on a list of 9 months' men for the Rhode Island service, referring to the ongoing siege of Rhode Island. Included on the list was a John Pickering, of whom I'm uncertain. According to other sources, Edward did have a son named John, but those sources say that son died in 1747. Next, Edward's grandson, Jotham, was 18 years old in 1779, and now it was his turn to be called up. Rhode Island service may refer to the Rhode Island Regiment. In addition to my fourth great-grandfather Jotham, there's also the name John Pickering appearing on this list and on a muster roll for 1780. Again, not clear on who that John Pickering is or was. I know that after the war, my ancestor Jotham left Massachusetts and settled in Pennsylvania. His father, Jonathan, and family remained in Mendon for many years following the Revolution. Jonathan lived a very long time, and when he was in his early 60s, something occurred that made it necessary for the elders of the town to appoint a guardian over him. This was in 1798. In 1821, the selectmen of Mendon voted to allow preserved Pickering, the son of Jonathan, 40 cents per week for the support of his father. In 1822, the town elders again voted to allow preserved Pickering, son of Jonathan, 40 cents per week for the support of his father. The final entry that I found in the annals of the town of Mendon told that the select men of Mendon voted that the town pay preserved Pickering $15.50 for extra expenses in the late sickness and burial charges of his late father, Jonathan Pickering. In that year, 1823, Jonathan was 96 years old when he died. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. If you enjoyed watching this episode, be sure to hit the like button down below and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.